guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about some manual setting mistakes that you may be making when you're taking your beauty portraits. And I wanted to delve into this a little bit today because I think there's a lot of issues that come along with being a beginner in beauty photography. And if you haven't been taking beauty photos before, you might come across some little issues that start to arise that maybe you haven't experienced with other types of portrait photography or other types of photography before. I wanted to go through some of the technicalities today because I feel like this isn't something that I have gone through yet on my channel. And I've tended to steer away from manual settings and things like that because there's a lot of information out there already. But I did feel like this might be helpful for any of you guys out there who are looking at starting beauty photography in the near future. So without further ado, let's go through some manual setting mistakes that you might be making when taking beauty photos. So one of the first mistakes I'm going to be talking about with manual settings and taking beauty photographs is not having the correct white balance. So this can really change depending on whether you're doing natural light beauty photography or whether you're doing in studio. But I do feel like it's really imperative to get your white balance right in camera first off. Yes, you can go into editing programs afterwards. And yes, there's programs like Capture One that will do a really good job of altering the white balance. But personally, I can't stand not having my white balance correct in camera to start off with sometimes. It's just really hard for me to visualize as I'm taking the photos what everything is going to look like in post-processing, especially because skin is such a huge part of beauty photography. And a lot of the time, especially if you're taking macro photos or photos that are very close up of the model's face, the majority of the photo could be skin. And white balance really, really does affect skin tone. So I think it's really important to try and get it right in camera first. I've hated having the wrong white balance before and trying to shy away from actually showing my creative team members on the day the shots, or if I've been tethering, it's been really cringy to see how bad the white balance has been, if I've forgotten to set it initially, or if I just haven't got the right white balance in general. It's something that really bothers me personally. Maybe it doesn't bother everyone else, but I do feel when it comes to beauty photography and any portraiture that you're using where a lot of the skin is taking up the shot, try and get your white balance right in camera so you can kind of visualize things a lot better as you're going along. And then people aren't going to be looking over your shoulder thinking the skin tone looks really blue or really, really orange. The second mistake that I've found that a lot of people tend to struggle with their manual settings, and one of the mistakes that I find that comes up very often with beauty photography is that the aperture is too wide. And I think for a lot of people who are moving from portrait photography into beauty photography, I think that's natural to sort of still want to have that wide aperture, because with portraiture in general, yes, wide apertures can be very flattering. They can create beautiful bokeh and a beautiful background blur, and it creates a really nice dreamy effect. A lot of the time, depending on your style of work, of course, but a lot of the time with beauty photography, you don't necessarily want a wide aperture. And this is especially true if you're shooting in studio and you're using strobes. But even with natural light beauty photography, it's really difficult to get everything you need in focus when you've got such a wide aperture. Personally, I don't tend to use anything under about f8 these days with beauty photography. I just prefer to have as much in focus as possible. And that is whether I'm shooting in natural light or whether I'm shooting in studio. I just prefer to have a higher aperture that will allow me to get every little bit of detail I can out of the image. Because this is something that you will start to realize, especially if you're shooting for clients and things like that, is that they want to see the detail. They want to see detail in the skin, in your lashes, in the eyes. Everything really needs to be in focus as much as possible. So if you're struggling with not getting the kind of look you want with your beauty photos, maybe try using a smaller aperture or something that is a bit higher, say above f8 on your next beauty shoot, and you might kind of get that detail that you want. Okay, so now this next manual setting mistake I feel is kind of applicable to a lot of different types of photography, but particularly portrait photography, anything where there's kind of a subject, and that is not setting your focal points correctly. I feel like it's really important to do this, or at least at the bare minimum, make sure it's kind of on auto and you've got all of them selected, so you will at the bare minimum get most of what you kind of want in focus. But I do recommend, whatever kind of way you're shooting, to set your focus points correctly in camera. And this is a really quick and easy thing to do when you're shooting. And this is just something to really keep in mind. If you're not getting those sharp images that you want or not getting everything in focus that you want, it's really important to do this. More so with natural light beauty photography over working with strobes. Working with strobes is a lot easier getting everything in focus because it really does freeze the shot when you're using artificial lights like that, and you can kind of get the detail that you need quite easily. But I do recommend this if you are doing a lot of natural light beauty. Make sure that you're setting your focus points correctly, and this goes for kind of any type of portraiture really. And then the next thing that I've found that happens pretty often is actually using shutter speeds in the wrong way. And this can be between natural light and in studio beauty photography. So for a lot of beginners out there, if you're starting off with studio photography and you've just moved into maybe using beauty photography as kind of an entry point for studio and using strobes, it's really important that you use a shutter speed that syncs up with your lights. So usually it'll be somewhere between 1/100th of a second and 1/250th of a second. So any kind of point between those are usually what a lot of strobes will sync to. If you go higher than that, or if you go lower, you're going to start to realize that your images are getting big black strips and things aren't going to be syncing together properly. So that's one thing that I would say to keep in mind if you're new to using strobes, if you're new to beauty photography and studio photography, keep that in mind. But also when you're switching from studio to natural light beauty photography, it's important to have a shutter speed that is a little bit higher, because you start to realize, especially as you're taking up very close photos and you need that detail, slight movements can really make a difference and you can get a bit of motion blur in your shots. And this is one thing that sometimes I still struggle with at times, is making sure that when I'm switching from using strobes to going outside or using natural light, that I need to up my shutter speed a little bit more to really make sure that detail is getting captured and I'm not getting any motion blur in the shots. Okay guys, well I hope you really enjoyed this video on some of the manual setting mistakes that I find tends to happen when people start with beauty photography. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure that you do. And if you've come across any manual settings mistakes, make sure you put them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about them. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.